How's it going, y'all? If you're wondering, no, I have not slept since last night's live, and here we are again doing another live, and this one's on an off day, as the Raptors, in the aftermath of the Toronto Raptors dropping a game to the Philadelphia 76ers, and really a day after some of Nick Nurse's comments have had some time to settle in. I want to talk about Nick Nurse's next contract. I want to talk about the timing of everything that's coming out. And I want to talk about the media space and how things and information comes out, why it comes out, and how the media is often used, in my opinion, and perhaps factually true, and anyone who works in the media space could definitely attest to this, how things that generally come out are usually to someone's benefit and usually to someone's detriment. We are now at an age where players, agents, GMs, some coaches have ins with certain media members whom they can use to leak information because, quite frankly, it just looks better that way, right? Hello, Mohammed. Today's not going to be a call-in show. This is just going to be me straight shot talking, and hopefully this will allow me to be a lot more active with the comment section as well. And yes, Chad, this is a surprise live. And today we're just going to talk about Nick Nurse and the timing of everything that's happening here. This season that has been, this is not going to be really a review of the season. We're going to save that until the curtains close on the season. And have a lot to say at that point for sure. But right now, I was just, spending my morning finishing up an editing project on a film that I worked on, and to take a break from editing, because this is the workaholic that I am. My girlfriend accuses me of being a classic overachiever. I took some time to just do some Raptor stuff for Pinzara basketball, and crunching some stats and numbers, and then I was like, I want to go back and listen to that Nick Nurse clip again. I want to just try to make sense of this because the way that Michael Grange would have you believe it, it was just refreshing candor. It was just a remarkably honest way to approach it. And I think there's a little bit in Grange's article that may suggest that he was a little surprised by this, candor. But here's the situation. Let me draw it for you straight. This is not going to be a 2 hour live. We're just going to try to dissect this very quickly and get to the meat of the issue. Nick Nurse is not having the season that he envisioned or that Masai Ujiri envisioned. There has been very little outward criticism, in my opinion, relative to other coaches of the last 3 seasons in general. There have, quiet murmurs around the NBA about his rotations, the lack of development of young players. Yeah, sure, you're willing to write off Malachi Flynn as a one-off. Oh, he didn't work out. Delano Banton, okay, well, I guess that didn't work out. Jalen Harris, okay, well, now Scotty's slumping. And Precious is not working. You have to understand, Masai Ujiri is a scout. He is a scout. At and I can tell you from talking to a lot of scouts that once a scout, always a scout. This element of a person's identity does not go away. You will always approach everything like a scout. It's called scout mindset. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's even a book called the Scout Mindset. It is, and actually, it's by one of my favorite people on earth, and definitely go check that book out. But this idea of being a scout, Masai Ujiri's optimism about Precious Achua could not be contained. When the Raptors got him, he told Precious, "You're mine," like Shang Tsung in Mortal Kombat. You're mine. Your soul is mine. He was so excited about this. You don't think Masai Ujiri is looking at that saying, how could I have been so wrong? Look at the season Precious Achua is having. The optimism with which Masai Ujiri addresses Scotty Barnes in any conversation which revolves around Scotty's future is akin to the proudest father in the world addressing his firstborn. He's gushing. He's blushing. You don't think it's apparent to him that Scotty's not developing the way that he had envisioned? When it's one guy, it can be a glitch in the system. It can be a one-off. We didn't properly evaluate something. You start looking at every guy and your team sucks, and they're underperforming and they're missing winnable games, suddenly the is it the whole thing or is it one guy? That question starts getting bigger. And while, if Nick Nurse had 3, 4 years left on his contract, this wouldn't really be an issue because, even if you fired him, you'd still owe him like an absorbent amount of money. But Nick Nurse was hoping for a contract extension now because talk to any coach with some amount of pedigree in the NBA, in the NFL, nobody, and I do mean nobody, wants to coach with 1 year left on their contract. And that's exactly what Nick Nurse will have starting this offseason. He'll have 1 year left on his contract. And it is obvious to me at this point that he is not willing to coach an entire year with a gun over his head. It is also obvious to me that given the season that the Raptors have had, and given the lack of development that the Raptors have seen, specifically from their young players, the lack of success that the Raptors have enjoyed in the playoffs, since Kawhi left, of course, asterisk, since Kawhi left, I think it is fair to say that Nick Nurse is on the hot seat. Surprise. Being on the hot seat is not a good place to be when you're trying to negotiate a new contract, which could be potentially the last big contract you get as a head coach. Look, talk to Jay Triano. He has not got another head coaching gig in the NBA. Sam Mitchell, no head coaching gigs. Dwayne Casey, after he's done in Detroit, he will never get another head coaching gig again. You can guarantee it. There's too much young talent. Nick Nurse is not a spring chicken. He has spent a great deal. I mean, we're talking about a league in which guys are getting opportunities at 34, 35 years old. Their first head coaching gig at 40. Nick Nurse is in his 50s. So the next contract could be the last contract. You got to think of it that way. This is not a long shelf life sometimes for coaches. The days of, Greg Popovich, Pat Riley, I mean, these days are done. And you have to be so great. You can win a championship and still be, on the outs. It can happen. Now, I'm not saying that Nick Nurse will not find another opportunity. He will, whether it's with the Raptors or whether it's the Rockets or whoever. But there are a ton of very good coaches looking for their first gig. There are certain coaches looking for their second or third gig. He is not exactly in the optimal position for leverage in terms of a new contract. His team sucks. There aren't a lot of head coaching jobs out there that are considered desirable. He has to create some sort of leverage. Now, here's the problem. I have no issue with somebody creating leverage behind the scenes. You go into Masai Ujiri's office, you say, hey, man, I got an offer from the Houston Rockets, and if you don't give me an extension, I want out. I have no problem. You keep that private, that's fine. But when I see this in the media, in the public space, and he is given a softball, he wasn't even directly asked about it. He launched into it himself. That was the thing that I missed. When I saw that clip, I did not realize that he offered this somewhat unprompted. The Doug Smith article, now Doug Smith, in my opinion, is a mouthpiece for a couple of people, and I'm not really, all that interested in telling you who those couple of people are. But go listen, go read all of his stuff, and you can piece it together pretty easily for yourself. Who he's really speaking on behalf of, who his contacts are, who they're plugged into. He is a pawn. He is a pawn. He's not an insider. He's not Shams Charania or Adrian Wojnarowski. No, he is a pawn. And no offense to him when I say that. I don't like him. Obviously, that's clear from the 100 plus times I've mentioned him. I don't think I've mentioned him once positively. You want to accuse me of being a hater of anybody, you accuse me of being a hater of Doug Smith. I do not like Doug Smith. But in complete honesty, where this is coming from and the timing of it is so disastrous for his team. He was not asked, are you going to coach the Toronto Raptors next year? And then said, yeah, I need a break to evaluate things. 10 years is really, a lot of time, whatever. No. He wasn't asked that. He was just asked where he was on the season. That was the question that prompted this entire soliloquy about well, 10 years is a long time. I've been with this organization for 10 years. I have to think about where my head's at. This is, yo, anyone out there who's thinking about hiring this guy, this team, this organization, if you watched, if you were in attendance at Will Liu and Alex Wong's, live event with Bobby Webster, and if you weren't, someone literally live tweeted the whole event. Go check a recap of that and go to the part where they talk about how difficult it is to convince NBA champions to tank. You can tell, quite frankly, from all the rumors that were out there about, potentially trading Fred to the Clippers, that this team was really like this close to getting blown apart. And every time they entertained that idea, it came back to, well, we got to give this core one last chance. Nick Nurse is part of that core. So is Fred VanVleet and so is Pascal Siakam. You have given this trio that you owe something to, apparently, because y'all won a championship together. You have given them their last hurrah in the process, costing yourself draft assets, worsening your draft pick this year. You have chosen to go to war with people who aren't even on your side. All of these guys are just looking to get paid, yo. There's the bombshell for you. It's not that difficult to figure out. This isn't motivating, Nick Nurse. I've been a big supporter of Nick Nurse. Up until last night, I still championed him. I still supported him. I genuinely believed when I heard that clip of him talking about this that someone had directly asked him, and that, in a moment of frazzled fatigue, he just decided to be honest. But the more I think about this just leverage. Fred VanVleet going on a press tour around the All-Star break, blaming everything under the sun for why he struggled. Scotty Barnes has the ball too much. I'm struggling off the ball. My new role this. How did that help the team? If I'm Chris Boucher or I'm Scotty Barnes or I'm Precious Achiuwa looking at this and saying like, oh, we don't have a bench, we don't have this, we play funky lineups, whatever. I'm thinking like, oh, you coming at me, bro? You shoot like 5 for 20 every other game. You coming at me? That's not motivating. That's not leadership. I swear I'm told every single day that Fred VanVleet's a leader. I do not believe it at all. That's not what leaders do. Look, Kyle Lowry was negotiating a contract behind the scenes all the time. Like literally all the time. His mind was always on the next contract. All right. He wanted leverage in the organization. Kawhi, what did Uncle Dennis ask for? I think he asked for the keys to Toronto. I think he asked for $1 billion. I think he asked for a submarine. Uncle Dennis asked for the world. I don't have a problem with how you negotiate. I don't have a problem with what you do behind the scenes. I really don't. I honestly don't. You want to ask for $30 million. Not my money. It's not my money. I don't care. Especially if you're a coach. Shit, get paid $50 million. Take care of your family. Nick Nurse has worked very hard. He is a very hardworking coach. He has done everything to sort of tether himself into Canada basketball, the Raptors organization. So much of it is him. He's everywhere. He's everywhere. It's very hard to get unstuck from someone who becomes everything for you. This is going to sound very abstract, but I'm going to lean on a personal example. I've never been a head coach in the NBA. I've never been a head coach anywhere. I don't know who would hire me. But I think about this person in my life. 6 years ago, 7 years ago. This person came into my life and they were a blessing. Next thing I know, they're producing my films. They're working at my film festival. They're in every friend group that I had. This person found a way into that friend group. Every single one. Literally, I could not go to one corner of my life and see nothing about them there. They were in everything. They were in the film festival. They were in my films. They were acting in my films. They were everywhere. And then I started to try to think about how to untether myself from this person because some of their shit started to stink and I didn't like, what they were doing in my life. And I started to feel like, how do I even unhook myself from this person. They're literally everywhere. I rely on them for everything. You get stuck. You get stuck with people like this sometimes, you know? I'm sure if you reflect on your life, you find someone like this in your life for sure. Nick Nurse is everywhere. He's everywhere. He's become the face of your organization in so many ways. He has it is masterful leverage. Masterful. You'll have a shooting school. Nick Nurse's, shooting school. He's created a mythology around him that he can do no wrong, right? He's created this entire, like, look, we discussed in yesterday's live. There are a lot of coaches who could have won with that group. That group is so underrated. Marc Gasol, Kyle Lowry, Danny Green. I mean, seriously. Apart from the fact that they gelled so quickly, they didn't have like a great deal of time to get accustomed to each other. That's a veteran group that was battle tested, that integrated really smart players from really well coached systems. Yeah, analytically speaking, the Raptors were one of three teams that could have realistically won a championship that year. And in most years where Dwayne Casey was coaching, the Raptors were not in that group. We would all like to believe that the switch from Dwayne Casey to Nick Nurse is what resulted in a championship. And we would like to believe that justifiably one of those guys is coaching Detroit right now and the other one is anointed as one of the greatest coaches in the NBA. We want to believe that. We want to believe that that gap was so large, right? I was a very big Dwayne Casey critic. Huge, huge. Did not like him. Did not like his rotations. Did not like, some of his decisions after timeout stuff. I didn't think he was creative. I didn't think he adjusted well mid-game. I have none of those complaints with Nick Nurse. But one thing I can never say about Dwayne Casey is I don't feel like he ever did something like this. I never felt like, when people talk about Dwayne Casey, they still talk about him as coach. Coach would never. Coach never. I talk to players, like I've talked to players who were on that team. They still call him coach. There was like a real fatherly bond with him. Maybe not the most intellectually gifted coach, maybe not the most creatively gifted coach. But and yeah, sure. He was trying to take care of his family too. He had kids, like every human being in the world. He was trying to take care of his family too. But I never feel like Dwayne Casey in the midst of a play-in battle, which he had demanded and requested and asked for and supported, that he would go to the media and start questioning his future. 4 or 5 games before, I'm still committed to this team. I'm still trying to win. Yo, the Raptors have been very good to Nick Nurse, in my opinion. Okay, I think they've shown him a lot of faith. I think they've put a lot of trust in him. I think they've, elevated him in a great degree. And I'm sure there's no part of Dwayne Casey that isn't pissed off about that. He's openly voiced his frustrations about the fact that he wasn't really given a chance, the same chance. We talk about, look, there's open criticism. We never heard it about Nick Nurse and Dwayne Casey, but there was open criticism in the NBA that Mark Jackson brought the Warriors, established the system, created this entire groundwork with Steph and Clay, and Steve Kerr comes and gets all the credit. And there was this idea of, why did one guy get shafted and the other guy get elevated? I don't think we have that element with, I don't think we've ever heard that with Nurse and Casey. I don't think that component, that angle of it was ever explored in terms of why. It is, I have not been critical of Nick Nurse up until about January. That's when I started. I mean, after a lot of times where people are like, hey man, like, you keep criticizing Fred and Pascal, you keep criticizing this player and that player. Why don't you look at the coach? Why don't you actually look at what he's doing? And I started looking. Sometimes you have blinders on with people. I admire Nick Nurse. I read his book. I think he's a genius. I see some of the stuff he's done as a basketball coach, from the Iowa Energy to, his international experience to what he's doing with Team Canada and some of the adjustments that he makes in games. Like, he's a very smart man, and I have a bias towards smart people. I tend to like smart people a little bit more than not so smart people. It's a bias. We all have biases. That's my bias. And so sometimes it's hard to accept that someone who's smart just isn't doing a great job, but it happens all the freaking time. There are really capable people who fail out at jobs all the time, all the time. Using leverage for your next contract at this state of the season is exactly what's wrong with this team. I was upset when Fred VanVleet did this. The team was struggling. This was not time for a press tour. I get it. Jaylen Brown went on his press tour saying he's frustrated with his team and blah, 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 whatever. Well, the Celtics honestly are in a different position than us. I don't love that he did that either. But for a head coach to address this question this way, and now everything that everyone's talking about, including me creating a freaking video about this, which I hate that I'm egging this on, but everyone's talking about this now, right? Doug Smith writes that article. Michael Grange writes the article. You combine both articles. You combine what was said by Bobby Webster at that live show with Will Liu and Alex Wong, and you piece it all together and you say, this is leverage. This team doubled down, showed faith in this man, but they're not giving him his contract extension. And because they haven't renewed his contract in the midst of what has been a horrible season, because they want to keep their options open. One of the big things that Masai Ujiri is always talking about is keeping his options open, flexibility, roster flexibility, contract flexibility going forward. Well, I got to be honest. This is the wrong time for this. This is not the right time. This is not the right time for Nick Nurse to be leveraging his contract because it becomes a distraction for a team that is already disconnected with so many guys who are already eyeing greener pastures. Gary Trent Jr., they flashed to him on the bench yesterday. Yo, the game was happening. He was less engaged than any fan in the building. He had the blankest stare I've ever seen. And I don't blame him. That's not criticism. I don't blame him. You'd be mentally checked out too if you had to endure this season. If you're willing to give a coach of the year because they overperform expectations, then you know what? Flip side also true. The Raptors have not performed to expectations. Not at any stretch this season has this team played competent basketball. Now, I am so tired, and I have become so tired and been so exhausted all year listening to people trash the bench, trash, the roster construction. I assure you that if you were to hand this team sans politics to a league average head coach, and I'm not saying Nick Nurse is not a league average head coach. I'm saying he's better than the league average, but I'm saying just a random, league average head coach, like a Will Hardy. I don't know if Will Hardy is considered a league average head coach right now, but a Will Hardy, okay, someone like that, and you just hand it to him and say, okay, here are the tools you have. You have this. You have all these guys. You have continuity coming from last year. You don't have to integrate a whole bunch of new guys. You have a healthy mix of switchable guys. You have young veterans. Oh, and we're going to add Jakob Poeltl too. It would be impossible for me to predict that person could end up with a worse record than Nick Nurse right now. And instead of saying, you know what, it's on me, I totally understand that my contract is not going to get renewed. I will deal with this in the off season and we will figure this out then, but I will not address this right now. No, instead, we are going to effectively create a distraction going into the play-in situation so that my team is thinking about it, the media is writing about it. Why would you do this? Is it? Sorry about that. I've always said sounds. Okay, got it. That's going to be a really hard habit to break. Jonathan saying should have waited for the exit interview. 100%. 100%. You cannot, first of all, I've always considered Nick Nurse a very smart person. You cannot call this game right now. Genuinely speaking, if the other side of this, and I think the second point of this is To me, this is not a coach who believes in his team. Want the truth? That's the truth. You're saying the right stuff, but your actions are completely dissonant from what you're saying. You say that you want to get this team playoff experience. Well, they had playoff experience. They got whopped by the Sixers last year. And let's be honest, Nick Nurse, the guys you're actually going to play in the playoffs have plenty of playoff experience. The vast majority of them have been to the playoffs multiple times, okay? The guy, the only guy really that you're going to play that doesn't have a lot of playoff experience is Scotty Barnes. Because let's be honest, like Chris Boucher is going to come off the bench and Gary Trent's going to come off the bench as your sole two guys. And quite frankly, neither one of them are probably going to be on the team next year. So who are we building playoff experience for other than maybe you having like a wild shot at getting out of the first round, upsetting a higher seed, and then guaranteeing yourself a new contract on that basis? It's a very weird season because the mandate for this season was if this team does not get out of the second round or out of the first round, go further than we went last year, writing, read between the lines, that is what it means. Getting out of the first round, then we have to, kind of reevaluate where we are with this core. Okay, well, now you have a coach who's going into an off season where he needs a contract. And, you can tell from the fact that he renegotiated his contract after the championship that money matters to Nick Nurse, as it should. But he's not going to go into next season without a contract, and he's not going to negotiate a lower contract because his team has played horribly. So now we are at a situation where he is actually playing 4D chess with the Raptors front office. Oh, you don't want to give me a contract? I'm hijacking your season, basically. You know what? I remember when Chris Bosh sat out with that face injury before he went to Miami, and the team was still in the playoff thick of things. I'll tell you, there are a lot of Raptors, ex-Raptors, who had unceremonious exits from this team. He is the one that I don't think I can ever forgive. Regardless of everything that's happened with him, blood clots, championships, Miami, everything. What he did on his way out, and then the icing on top was, the air smells different. That quote, that was like, that's it. Chris Bosh, you did not exist. As a Raptor fan, you did not exist. I wiped those 7 years you played here out of my memory. They were horrible. For the most part, they were horrible. But the icing on the top, the insult to injury on the way out was he showed you who he was on the way out. He showed you who he was on the way out. You go to war with guys every single night. Team, this means a lot. I really do mean that. Team means a lot. Rank Scrub, thanks a lot for the super chat, man. I really appreciate it. He says, in my opinion, this team was supposed to peak this year, and when it didn't happen, some of the established players and coaches had learned little from teammates. I don't understand. But if you want to elaborate, you don't have to super chat again. Just, if you want to elaborate, I'd love to understand what you mean by that. Country Kong, I went back and I saw some of your chat from last night, and you seem very insistent that Masai is the problem. And you also seem pretty insistent that I need to talk about it. Well, I did talk about it in a 37-minute video, if you want to go back and check that out, where I talked about, issues that I think with the philosophy of the team and mistakes that Masai's made, and I got slammed for it pretty hard. And I think if I check the numbers on that, there's I lost 50 to 60 subscribers for that video. It has about 7,000 views. You can definitely go check it out if you want my thoughts. I still respect the hell out of Masai Ujiri, and I do not believe that, other than ignorance, maybe willful ignorance about people that he's close to and believed in, I don't necessarily think he's, I don't think he deserves blame for this. I genuinely believe that the people he's put into these positions, his scouting work is awesome. And you can say that being a president of a team is much more than being a scout. And I get that. But at the end of the day, the decisions, yeah, like he's not above criticism anymore, if you're asking that. He definitely deserves some of this. He did put this team together. But do not forget, he also drafted Scotty Barnes when it was not the popular move at the time. And as someone who often takes the unpopular, who is willing to stand on a very unpopular opinion as people flame him on Twitter and say horrible things about him and make fun of him and create lies about him, I can tell you that having unpopular opinions and holding them and doing the right thing, even when it's not the popular thing and what people want you to do, is actually a pretty difficult thing to do. And there aren't a lot of presidents, leaders, GMs, etc., that can do that. There just aren't. Um, so I think he deserves faith, and I think honestly, I would like to see him implement a new head coach. Ime Udoka was one of the finalists for this job the last time it was up, and Nick Nurse got it. I would like to see him get a shot, to be honest. But moving on from that, I think what Nick Nurse has done here, honestly, is just a massive distraction for this team. I think it's irresponsible. And I genuinely hope that his next employer, whoever that is, whether it's MLSE or whether it's the Houston Rockets or whether it's whoever, I really don't care where he goes at this point. But I hope that they look at this the same way I looked at Chris Bosh sitting out the last 8 games or whatever before he went to Miami, trying to avoid getting injured ahead of his big payday. Basketball is a sport. Hopefully, probably, possibly a sport that you, if you're listening to this channel, unless you just love looking at my face and hearing my voice, probably a sport that you love. It's definitely a sport that I love a lot. And I'm not going to become one of those people who says that money is ruining the game, even though I have been that person many times in my life. But there's a time and place for money. This whole thing, this whole business, this whole global expansion of the NBA, basketball, all of this works the same way professional wrestling used to work. It works on the illusion that it's real. You start introducing referee scandals like Tim Donaghy, you start introducing all the business talk about contracts, and you start having guys sit out games because they're trying to avoid injuries ahead of, a big payday. Suddenly, as a fan, you get pulled out of it because how can I care about something? How can I care about players who don't care about the game? That's hard. Allen Iverson was not the most efficient guy. He was not, he was mired in off-court controversies. But I'll tell you, that guy did not cheat the game once. He put his heart on the line. And yeah, he made a ton of money. The Reebok contract was crazy. And I'm so glad that they suspended some of those payments for later, to be honest. But people respected the hell out of him. And they still do to this day. When people talk about Allen Iverson, no one will ever say that he cheated the game or that he didn't work hard. I remember hearing stories about Allen Iverson from players who had played with him or played against him. And every one of them it was crazier than the last, some of the stuff that, they say about him. And I think that's what endeared people to him. I think that's what endears people to anyone who just goes out and plays with a pure heart and a love for the game. That love for the game cannot be lost. In all of the business and the economics and the contract negotiations and the politics of all of it, that cannot be lost. I genuinely believed with Nick Nurse that he loved this game. Who could possibly be so obsessed with the stuff that he's obsessed with? It just sounds, he reminds me of that type of person that you're trying to like talk to about anything, and they'll always bring it back to basketball somehow, But I got to realize he's not that guy. He's always been about a lot of other stuff. There's a lot of other stuff with him. Because if you really about basketball, you could never allow Fred VanVleet's contract situation to override the interests of 16 other people just because you're cool with the guy and you loyal to him. You could never allow that. You could never enable, the stats, the stat padding of Pascal Siakam's bid for All NBA. You could never enable that. You could never shaft your bench and development and Q. Because look, at the end of the day, you got to look at this from the perspective. You are a Toronto Raptor fan. You are not a Nick Nurse fan, a Scotty Barnes fan, a Pascal Siakam fan. These guys are here and they'll leave. At some point, they'll retire or they'll leave. They'll be traded. They'll get injured. They'll like whatever. You know, you were a Vince Carter fan, right? He's gone. He got traded and he got traded again and he signed with another team and he's like, 10 teams later, he's out of the league. He's got his own podcast. You're still a Raptor fan. I think as fans, we have to start thinking about the long-term future of the team that we're supporting here. Kind of like a college team, You get invested in the scouting, you get invested in, the infrastructure of the team. Okay, well, I'm invested in the OVO Center. I'm invested in the scouts. I'm invested in the brain trust. I'm invested in, the infrastructure around the Scotiabank Arena. I'm invested in the fan experience. I'm invested in all elements of what it means, what Toronto Raptors basketball represents. I'm invested in the off-court charity stuff. I'm invested in the 905. It's all part of being a fan. And yes, the players as well, and the coaches, and the general managers. But it's not one person over anybody. And I think as a fan, we have to remember that. Cheering for Scotty Barnes, honestly, for me, a lot of it has to do with the future. It has to do with hope for the future. And supporting Nick Nurse was conditional. It was conditional on him supporting the long-term benefit and growth of the Toronto Raptors. I would like to believe, as a child who probably still believes in Santa Claus, I swear, that Nick Nurse would put the interests of a team that he has worked for 10 years over his contract. I wanted to believe that, and I believed it until yesterday. It's hard to believe it today. I got to be honest. It's really hard to believe it today. Because Delano Banton is probably going to be on this roster if he leaves. And you've squandered 2 years of that valuable development time. You can't say you completely squandered it. He got minutes and whatever, but it hasn't gone to plan, right? Malachi Flynn, Precious Achiuwa. These guys are like, he's here and then he's gone, right? There are a lot of coaches out there who develop guys, get fired, and another guy takes over. There are a lot of coaches out there who develop guys, their general manager trades that guy, and they don't get credit. I don't remember people giving credit to Butch Carter for how good Tracy McGrady became. They gave credit to Doc Rivers. Who was the guy who coached the Boston Celtics before Doc Rivers got there? Does anyone remember? Do you think he has anything to do with how good Paul Pierce became? Do we give any credit at all? Part of it is the system is just corrupted to the, immediacy of this is the guy who did that there. I don't think Dwayne Casey is ever credited for the Toronto Raptors championship. All the development work that went into Norman Powell. And granted, he didn't do it alone. For sure, he didn't do it alone. But he was the head coach. If you're gonna throw him under the bus for losing playoff series, you have to give him credit for the players that went out in that Kawhi trade. He developed the hell out of those guys. You have to give him credit for being the head coach at the start of We the North. He was there. He was the guy. You have to give him credit for what Jonas Valanciunas became and is still in the NBA. DeLon Wright. These guys have long NBA careers. Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby. All those guys developed under Nick Nurse. Does he get credit? Or is he really just a meme around Raptors culture right now? This is how far gone this season is. That, look, I'm never going to tell you that Dwayne Casey was my favorite coach, but he was also not my least favorite coach. My least favorite coaches in Raptor history, Sam Mitchell, Jay Triano. Those two guys. Really didn't like them. Dwayne Casey is probably up there as least. But I got to tell you, this entire process from Casey to Nurse has really made me reevaluate how we as fans think about this, how the coaches think about this, how the business affects all of this. In closing, I don't want to continuously rant on the same thing, and I realize this is turning into almost like I'm using you as a therapist just to, vent some frustration. And granted, I haven't slept in like 20 hours, so maybe this isn't making any sense at all. And I'm going to listen to this later and be like, oh my God, what did I do? Did I fall asleep on camera? what I want to say is that I think the timing of this could not have been worse. The Raptors are desperately scrambling and holding on for dear life. They need good news right now. They need 360 dunks from Scotty Barnes. They need big performances from Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam. They need a couple of bounces to go their way. What they do not need are profanity laced rants about officiating, subtle jabs at teammates. They do not need anyone saying that, I'm going to think about the off season. 10 years has been, they don't need any of that. And definitely they don't need that coming from Pascal Siakam or Fred VanVleet either. They don't need Gary Trent Jr. talking about his free agency. None of that. That's what leadership is. Leadership is the voice that says, guys, not now. Not now. Focus. We have a task at hand. The play-in. What we've scrambled and sacrificed all this year for is this one shot. And it is our goal, job, whatever. And I really do believe the Raptors have turned a corner. The net rating on that starting lineup is insane. I think it's a little misleading personally. I'm not going to read too much into it, but it has been promising. The starting five has been good. The Raptors have played promising basketball over the last month and a half. Scotty Barnes has really turned a corner on his season. I just did the breakdown. Do you know for 2 months in games that he has finished, he has not once finished outside of single digits? Sorry, he has not finished with single digit scoring once. The only time it happened was the game against Milwaukee where he left in the second half or in the first half and he didn't come back. He scored 5 points. 2 months straight, double digit performances every single time. He's turned a corner. Unfortunately, other guys not clicking around, but there was still some hope. I gotta admit, yesterday, I was starting to feel like, okay, I'm looking at the data, I'm looking at the numbers, it looks a lot better. Maybe the Raptors aren't really like a 9th seed, 10th seed type of team. Maybe they're like a 6th seed, which isn't that far off from where you were expecting them to be, which is like a 3rd or 4th seed, right? 6th seed wouldn't be that bad, right? Even if they don't make 6th, are they the 6th best team in the East at the end of the season? We're thinking there. 5th or 6th. Get there. Then we can at least talk about what this Jakob trade was. And to have a coach just come out and you don't think players heard that? Everyone's talking about it. You don't think the players like, yo, your coach is going to leave? I guarantee you every single player has heard about this at least 50 times from every single person who retweeted at them today. It's not bad enough that other people are saying, oh, Ime Udoka is going to be your next coach. Well, how do you feel now going to war with a guy who might not even be your coach in 2 days? You lose one game and he's gone. This is selling. You sold the season for a contract extension. Win, lose, or draw, come back or not, I will never respect what Nick Nurse did here. Ever. I don't care if it's genius. I don't care if it's smart. I don't care if it's good business. It is not good basketball. It's not what this team needed right now. This is a distraction. Honestly, you have spent an entire year lying to our faces, Nick Nurse, all year, okay? You have called terrible games good games. You have called great shots. You have called terrible shot selection great shot selection. So you clearly have no problem lying right to the media's face, okay? Let's not be all pious and pretend that you have some sort of Jesus complex now where you can't possibly lie. No, you could easily say that's a preposterous question. I have a contract for next year. My goal is to the Raptors. That is the politically correct answer. And quite frankly, this is the first time in my life that I'm going to just advocate that you take the politically correct route, like your buddy Fred VanVleet. Okay, take the politically correct route. But this was a distraction that was not needed. It does not help anybody. This is not like calling out Gary Trent Jr. for his defense. This is not like saying, oh, well, and how much controversy did that fucking create? And did it help? If he does it, then he fits us. If it doesn't, then he doesn't fit us. Yo, it's one thing to say a guy needs to play better, but a guy in a contract season, I don't know Gary Trent Jr. I don't know his dad. I don't know his people. I really don't. Again, I don't have any real ins into Gary Trent's camp. But if I was Gary Trent's friend, I'd be like, yo, this guy just cost you like so much money. He's got so much weight, so much credibility. People respect him. The way he's talking about you, you're not getting paid this offseason because of these quotes. He benches you. Like, did he deserve to get benched? Maybe. Sure. Fine. But if he deserved to get benched, half this team deserved to get benched. If he plays defense like that, maybe he fits us. If he doesn't, maybe he doesn't. I think that was the direct quote on Gary Trent Jr. I did not come into this season as a Gary Trent Jr. fan. I am leaving this season, however, a very big fan of his. Very big fan of his. I am willing to change. Not flip-flop. But as new information comes out, I am willing to adjust. And I hope that you are too. I hope that you are willing to look at people that you have looked at adoringly for years, people that you've won championships with, and ask yourself, not what have you done for me lately? This is not being an ungrateful fan. No, no, no. This is, what is the complete set of data telling me? What is the complete set of data telling me? The complete set of data is telling me that Gary Trent Jr. could have made a really big stink and a really big fuss about coming off the bench, and he chose not to. He chose to be professional. His direct quote was, be more of an energy giver than an energy taker. He has not sulked, apart from looking completely checked out mentally yesterday. When in a game he wasn't playing, he's not really, I don't see a downgrade in his, attention to detail on defense. I don't think he's playing necessarily badly. I haven't heard 1,000 rumors from Clutch Sports about him, potentially having suitors in this place and that place. Nothing like, oh, Fred VanVleet is definitely going to have, suitors in Orlando. Who do you think's putting this shit out? You think Jeff Weltman is just exhibiting here's the question that I don't think you asked yourself. Who put out that Fred VanVleet has interest from Orlando thing? I want to know. Who do you think did it? You think Jeff Weltman did it? You think Jeff Weltman is just projecting his, oh, we have a big plan to sign Fred VanVleet? Who does that benefit? Who the hell does that benefit? It doesn't benefit Orlando, and it doesn't benefit the Toronto Raptors. It must benefit somebody because someone wrote it. And a lot of people picked it up, and people talked about it, and we talked about it for weeks. It's almost like a foregone conclusion that Fred VanVleet, this, 28-year-old slumping on the decline point guard who has shot, 32 to 35% for the better part of a year, this guy apparently has a guaranteed, suitor in Orlando. And we're just supposed to accept that that's a case and that's out there. And we don't know who put it out there. And now Nick Nurse has apparently a home in Houston. Who do you think put that out there? You think Houston Rockets put that out there? Why? Why would they do that? Why would they do that? What benefit? There's no benefit to them at all. The only person who benefits from rumors about Nick Nurse in the midst of this losing season, having a guaranteed, job offer in Houston, and I'm not denying that he does, because Steven Silas has been a train wreck, and Nick Nurse on that team would be a massive step up. But Houston's like one of the worst coaching situations in the league. So you might think you're flexing, but you're not really flexing here. Okay? That is not a job that everyone is just dying to, people aren't just dying to fucking coach Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. And no one is dying to coach those two guys. Trust me. Nobody. It is not a desirable coaching job. I mean, it's an okay coaching. It's not like, I'd rather coach Detroit. If you want my honest opinion, I'd rather coach Detroit. That's crazy. That's saying something. This is leverage. I don't mind you use leverage in the off season, not in the season. This was not cool. I look forward to hearing more rumors about Nick Nurse. I look forward to seeing what happens with him. But I do not believe that the mood in the Raptors locker room is going to get better after this. I think it's only going to get worse. And yeah, I think it's just a perfect way to sort of put the curtains on this season. Maybe To those of us who are diehards, who are still sort of hoping a little bit, maybe a miracle, maybe the comeback kid, maybe Scotty Barnes turns it on and becomes, a top 25 player before our eyes, and then, is that enough to steal a couple of games from Boston? Y'all take the playoffs like it's for granted, and it is not. It is not. Not if you were the 7th seed, 8th seed, 9th seed, but especially if you're the 10th seed. You're going into Charlotte. This is the winnable game here. You know, these are the winnable games, the two Charlotte games. Yo, if you drop the two Charlotte games, like you're 10th. You're going to be 10th. You're going to be ninth or 10th. You guaranteed 10th or ninth. This is the definition of no man's land. You know that, right? Finishing with the 14th pick. That is the definition. Every single year, you look at the loser, the biggest loser in every year, like the absolute idiotic team that absolutely mismanaged their season every year is the veteran laden team that finishes with either the 13th or the 14th pick. Oh, it's not, oh, we have a group of 21-year-olds who fought and clawed and just barely missed the playoffs for one game. That's considered a win. No, we're on the cusp of something. No, this is a veteran-laden team. Yes, Thaddeus Young is a veteran. Fred VanVleet's a veteran. Jakob Poeltl at this point is a veteran. You are playing, like, consider the minutes that you're playing. Guys, where your points are coming from, where your usage is coming from. Yes, you are not playing kids here. Scotty Barnes is the kid in the lineup. Precious Achiuwa is barely playing now. Christian Coloco had minutes early. He's not really playing. It's totally different. Like the way you've won by running veterans into the ground, playing 40 minutes a night, just trying to eke out. So, and now it all makes sense. Now it all makes sense, right? This is why you're not willing to play the kids. This is why you're not willing to go away from Fred VanVleet for even 2 minutes during a game, because you're playing for the record. Playing for the record. Because honestly, Fred VanVleet gets paid, you get paid. That's your priority. That is the priority at the end of this, isn't it? It's not about, oh, will the Raptors have, developed prospects in Malachi Flynn, Delano Banton? I'm not even saying these guys could have been good. I honestly do not know because I haven't seen it. I've seen a stretch of inspired play from Delano Banton. I've seen a stretch of inspired play from Malachi Flynn. But if you ask me, like, honestly, if I'm evaluating their college tape and I'm looking at it just as a scout who doesn't know anything about how their NBA career is going to fold out, I see the logic in drafting both those guys. I'm not saying I was gung-ho over the Malachi pick, but I liked it. I'm not wrong about this shit too often. Like, I see it. And honestly, forget what I'm right or wrong about. Masai Ujiri is not wrong in the draft this often. I'm looking forward to next season already. I know that's probably not what you wanted to hear at the end of this, but I am. And after what Nick Nurse did here, I genuinely hope that Masai and Bobby are aware of this, as I'm sure they are. And I hope that they are willing to untether themselves from someone that feels so difficult to untether from. I really do. Anyway, sorry I haven't been too responsive to the chats. I'll try to just go back here. Everyone, only good thing about the Houston job is the taxes and his pay. I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, they do have a very high pick coming up. Facts. Erica plays with a really good point. Yeah, look, man. Like when people show you when people show you who they are, believe them. You should change your mind about people. I genuinely believe, like, if you want to look at like an overarching theme, from the last two lives, really, apart from my sort of impromptu book review of Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell yesterday. Also, there was a question yesterday, of books that I recommend, and it's interesting to have Erica's comment on, because I know that she's She's done like a top 23 reading list or whatever on Instagram once. But someone asked me three books that I would really recommend, and I don't know, you probably didn't come here for you came here for my basketball takes. You didn't come here for my book takes, but I pulled these books down yesterday and I completely forgot to mention them. So I'm just going to very quickly give a quick shout out to these three books. It sounds so weird giving a quick shout out to three classics, but here are three books that I definitely recommended. They are completely unrelated to basketball, but okay. So, three books that I super recommend. Um, Number one, The Genealogy of Morals by Friedrich Nietzsche. I highly recommend this book. I think it is a great a great blueprint for understanding how we think as human beings and the nature of good and bad, and you know, it's very nihilistic. But a lot of people think of nihilism as a sort of endpoint in existence, and I think it's more of a starting point. Um, Generally speaking, I tend to think of knowledge and all things in life as very circular and cyclical. So yeah, so I don't know if that makes sense to people, but I think Genealogy of Morals is amazing. Uh, the Deuxième Sex, the Second Sex, by Simone de Beauvoir. Um, Honestly, I think one of the greatest books I've ever read. Um, it's a it's a book on feminist literature and just sort of understanding. I think both books are really trying to examine how ideas come to be, but yeah, and then third is Demons by Dostoevsky. Three books that are not. I mean, I'm not going to say they're difficult reads. If you are, you know, reasonably educated, they're not difficult reads, but they're not easy reads either. But they're good reads. They're great books. Um, has anyone read those books, perchance? No, that's funny. Yeah, like I think I mean, I don't know you well enough to know which of these books you really like, but just definitely read the summaries. I think you'll be quite captivated by all of them. Um, Raptors dumb overrated president Masai turned down Shannon Sharp, future superstar for OG. Okay, first of all, okay, Mark, I realize you're a commenter on this channel, but I cannot let this comment pass without just making a quick observation. In internet history, almost every single person who calls somebody stupid within the same sentence that they are calling that person stupid says something stupid. Shaden Sharp. Shannon Sharp is not the guy you mean, ironically. But yes. Um, but yeah, like I get what you're saying, but OG has definitely not been the problem. Um, I understand people sometimes, you know, with the Messiah stuff, I understand that people sometimes just want to burn down everything, and, you know, that's just not realistic. It's just not the way, you know, teams are built. It's not the way rosters are constructed. Continuity is important. And OG and Anobi, I understand the grass is always greener on the other side, but you have to really, really think about like what is basketball. You can't just look at what is highlights and, you know, what's youth, and like you have to actually ask yourself, does Shaden Sharp impact winning at 22, 23, or 24 the way OG Anunoby is impacting winning right now? You know, you have no idea. You just don't, you know. Um, that's funny. Yo, my record on this is pretty clear. Okay. Like I became a meme on Reddit, which I found kind of funny, but one comment that, you know, was really, I don't know, it felt a little vindicating was, man's been right all season. You guys are just realizing right now. And I saw that comment and I was just like, it's nice that someone's sticking up for me on Reddit, but also, God damn it, I have been, haven't I? You know, I said that Scotty and OG were underrated by this fan base, and that they deserved a bigger role. They've gotten a bigger role and they've performed. Right? I've said Pascal Siakam is not him. He's not a superstar, not a top 5 player, not a top 10 player, and he's not. Said Fred VanVleet is selfish as fuck, and you're finding that out like every single day. Yo, I do want to say one thing though. And I'll close this out. We're at 59 minutes and 53 seconds. This was supposed to be like a 20-minute chat. My dog is dying to go out. We've had a very rocky and turbulent relationship with certain fans in the Raptor fan base, right? Some people hate Pinsire basketball. Cannot hate any other channel, but this is the channel that they absolutely hate. Nobody hates Raptors. I mean, I don't think people hate Raptors Digest or Raptors, but I've never heard anyone say they hate Raptors Republic. But man, the number of people who hate this channel, it's extreme. But I will tell you, this is a really funny thing. Sean Stevenson, who's one of, like, in my opinion, the loudest supporters of Pinsire basketball, he and I initially got into a disagreement on a Facebook group once about Gary Trent's defense. And I blocked him because I just do not play with people on the internet. Like, it's just like if you start approaching like hostility or like anger or any sort of swearing towards me, you're blocked like so fast. And yo, like we reconnected over all this time. Like he messaged me repeatedly a few times. I don't know if he's ever gonna see this. And like now we talk and he's a really cool dude and I'm very happy that he did that. But I'm saying like sometimes it's those people that we fundamentally disagree with most that we come to respect later. And the respect is totally mutual there. I love what he's doing and he's such a cool dude and he supported this channel so much. So, you know, bygones be bygones. To those people who've flamed out of this channel, who've written, I will never come back to this. Fuck you for your stupid Pascal Siakam hate or whatever. Yo, y'all want to come back? You want to talk it out? You want to call in one day and be like, hey, here's the things that I, think you were right about, and here's the things I think you were wrong about, and I'm gonna, we can shake and move on. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I'm not holding grudges. Um, yeah, I mean, we can just, you know what I mean? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not personal. It's basketball. Like whatever. I don't like your favorite player. Great. I don't care. You know, if Will Liu and Blake Murphy and all these guys, who've I believe underrated Scotty throughout the year, if they can just adjust their thinking to what's reality and what's happening, then bygones be bygones. We can probably just bump into each other at a Raptors game or something, and it's like nothing really happened. It doesn't. It's not that serious. It's just basketball, you know. But I gotta tell you, like, I mean, on the one hand, I'm saying it's not that serious about basketball, but we are just people talking about the game. I do believe that if you are in that room, in that locker room, in that coaching huddle, I mean, just imagine you're Earl Watson or Rico Hines or Nate Bjorkgren or well Nate Bjorkgren obviously very very much in the ins with but it's very destabilizing for an entire coaching staff, for an entire team. I mean, we think of the team as like the 8, 9 guys we see on the court every night, but this team is so huge. It's the training staff. It's all these people. It's so many people. And it's those people's families too, it's those coaches. They have families that they've uprooted from Iowa and Chicago, and they brought them all over. Now all of those people have to deal with this anxiety for like the next 3-4 weeks about whether or not this guy's gonna be coaching next year. It's not a good thing to introduce at a time when you need focus, is what I'm gonna say. Yeah. Craig Dines, sorry, I started Demons recently. Great. Let me know in the chat how it goes. Nadim, that's a really good question. No, I don't. Uh, call it wishful thinking, man, but like I think um I cannot tell you what he's going to do with his next contract. Like when he is up for unrestricted free agency, all bets are off. He could go wherever. Like and trust me, like the two teams that, would scare me in that situation, and I don't want to put this on record, but like just because I almost don't want to say it out loud, but I'm always going to support Scotty wherever he goes. This is never going to be about like, oh, if you're with the Raptors, I love you, and if you leave the Raptors, I'm gonna burn your jersey. No, that jersey's, like that jersey's permanent. It's staying. The Lakers and the Miami Heat. Um, Miami because it's in Florida, obviously. So if they clear cap space, he becomes a superstar. I think we as a fan base, if he does become a superstar, you're going to go through a year of, whining and dining and, pray to God that the team's really good and that all the water under the bridge and, sell him on it or whatever. But he strikes me as a very loyal person, but he's also a person who has a very clear vision for his basketball future. Okay. Um, a lot of rookies, they come into the league and they allow the situation to dictate their career. Very few are willing to come into the NBA and dictate the situation to the career that they had planned out for themselves. And this is not like, I'm not saying like he just came in and he just overwrote the team's plans and said, well, this is what I'm going to do. But I think he has retained, like you would see even in the third or fourth game last year where, Fred VanVleet's trying to say something to him or whatever. And it's just like, all right, Fred, all right. And then by game 60, it was just like, all right, Fred. You know, Fred VanVleet saying, Scotty Barnes is my toughest project to date or whatever. Yeah, it was also the first top 5 pick you've ever, led Fred VanVleet. Like maybe, a little bit of humility there would be appreciated and a little bit of perspective there would be great. You can't really treat the guy like a second round pick because he deserves better. I mean, like we're in, I think that conversation needs to happen at some point where we as a fan base kind of discuss our ageist leanings towards young kids and expecting all 21-year-olds to, act like Delano Banton. Like they're not all Delano Banton. I'm sorry. Like your top 5 pick, that should count for something. We're going to count Fred VanVleet coming off the bench for an NBA champion, call him an NBA champion forever. We're not going to count Scotty Barnes having 3 gold medals and count that for something. Shouldn't that count for something? Didn't he have to work hard for that? Didn't he have to work hard to become a top 5 pick? Didn't he have to work hard to, be a top 5 recruit in the country? Didn't he have to work hard for that? Shouldn't that count? I mean, you're gonna give Fred VanVleet, G League props, Final Four this, he did this at Wichita State. Okay, he worked for that, and he deserves all of that credit. And after all of that, he still went undrafted. But nevertheless, he deserves credit for all the shit that he's done and not done in his life. Well, so does Scotty. And like this fan base, like some of the talking points that come out of this, oh well, like he has to wait his turn. These are champions. Shut up, man. No, no, he does not, and no, he should not. So to answer your question, am I worried? No, I'm not worried because I'm supporting him either way. But if I was like, I don't know, if I wasn't me, like if I was someone who was like, oh my God, if he leaves Toronto, I'm just gonna die. If I was one of those people, yeah, I would be like probably not looking forward to 5 years from now. Let's just put it that way. Um, I mean, if it makes you feel any better, he wears shorts all the time, just like I do. That's funny in the winter. Um, I remember seeing a picture of him like last year where he was wearing shorts and it was like January, and I was just like, oh my God, he's just like he does that too. I thought I was the only person, and I swear, like that was a really cold day, and I was like, man, there might be 2 people in all of Toronto wearing shorts right now. And it's just me and Scotty. Um, if you don't get the drift, that's like me telling you the cold does not really like it doesn't bother me that much. So yeah. Um, Ramon, don't be so sure, man. Like he's a pretty smart dude. Uh, will not be successful in coaching in any team. I mean, I'm not suggesting that he's gonna go win championships, but I'm sure. Yo, bro, hate is a very strong word. I understand Fred. I do. I don't like the way that he's done what he's doing this year, and I don't think hate necessarily needs to come into it. But I feel you. I'm not. Those in glass houses should not throw stones. I get it. I have. You know what I'm realizing right now, like this fan base, and this just the way this team has been covered has been so imbalanced, and I've mentioned it before that I've had to go to such an extreme balance. I hope that next year we can get a little bit more balanced so that I can be a little bit more balanced. I would like to be more balanced. I don't want to be the Scotty propaganda channel. I've had to be the Scotty propaganda channel because like you got channels popping up left and right that are basically Scotty hate channels, and I just feel like this guy deserves a little bit of credit that he's not getting, and a little bit of faith that he's not really being shown by a lot of YouTubers and writers and whatever in this city. But like, I'm just trying to balance the narrative here. Like, I would like to be able to critically evaluate Scotty's deficiencies because he has plenty of them. I would like to be able to do that because I think, number one, it would be good for me. I think it would be good for us as a fan base. Look, my entire beef with this whole Siakam thing was, number one, I obviously, like, we can't even have a logical discussion about him if we keep overrating him in the way that we talk about him. But number two is also in a weird way to protect him, because I don't want, like, people who think I hate the guy. I just don't want y'all to call him something and then call him something else when he doesn't turn into something that you thought that he was going to be. You call him a superstar, and then he puts up 15 points in a playoff game where you needed him to where you needed him to be big. You're gonna call him a choker, but he's just being himself. You know what I mean? The pressure, it's like, is some people you're like, all right, like, let's load up the pressure on this dude. He can do it. He can rise to it. Some people are not built for that. So I think with Pascal, like, I think it's important. Anyways, this has been an impromptu live that has gone probably 50 minutes too long, but good luck to the Raptors in Charlotte. I look forward to seeing how this team responds to all this Nick Nurse stuff. Um, Lost in my post game analysis yesterday was a mind-boggling stat, which I leave to the 157 of you watching here in case you did not get this. The 76ers in yesterday's game, I believe, scored 77% in the first half. That is that is an all-time record for halftime scoring at the half, scoring efficiency in a half, all time for the 76ers. That's crazy. Do you know how long the 76ers have been a franchise? That's I mean, that's unimaginable. Like, I remember hearing it during the game, and granted, I was a little bit tired, but I was like 76% from the field. That's got to be a record. And then I just completely filed it in my brain, as in a go research this later. It is all time. No team has. That's crazy. That's how bad your defense has to be. You're all time. In a game that you absolutely. I mean, my God. I fully feel, Chris Boucher's frustration during the post game. Fully. Um, James, I'm getting a feeling that, like, from the chats previously, that you're turning into a very big Siakam fan. Not that there's anything wrong with that, obviously, but like, um, I I think Supermax is out of the question. But bro, I'm not protecting Masai. It's just, you cannot. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, man. Like, you don't you don't undo everything he's done for one season. Okay? You have to understand, like, I mean, you're a frequent commentator here, so a commenter on this channel, so I really want to address you personally because you've been going on about this for like 2 days now. I understand that you may have some sort of, issue with how Masai has constructed this roster. Please understand how this roster was constructed. Just critically evaluate it. You have a guy as your point guard who is making barely league average salary, who is undrafted and has been an all-star. You may not like Fred VanVleet, but a little perspective. That is a hell of a find. Okay? OG Anunoby is a 23rd overall pick. How many 23rd overall picks turn into all-star level DPOY type guys? Okay? Pascal Siakam, 27th overall pick, two-time All-NBA. Can you name another player who is a 27th overall pick or lower? Okay, wait, not lower. Okay, 27th to 28th, in that range. Okay, I don't want to go lower because then you get into Nikola Jokic territory. But can you name a guy picked that late in the draft in that range who is a two-time All-NBA prior to the age of 28? It's very hard to do. Okay, so what I'm saying is he pulled all three of those guys within one calendar year of each other. Okay. That's like back to back years. Three guys foundationally. Put them all in place. Traded guys away. Jakob Pertl, the guy he traded for, he's the guy he traded away. Smart management, man. Smart management of assets for the most part. I'm not saying he's perfect. He's definitely overrated. But let's not go to the other extreme of trying to act like he's not one of the best general managers in the league. I assure you, I watch the entire NBA. I see GMs make short-sighted and completely irrational and completely moronic decisions. I have agreed with 85 to 90% of every move that Masai Ujiri has made so far. The ones that I haven't really agreed with, honestly, the Jakob Pertl trade, Will Barton sign, it's been small stuff for the most part. Swapping out Utah for oh shit, what's his name? Juancho. Yeah, like more recently, the Thaddeus Young trade. Okay, yeah, there's been a few, but you can't put it all on him. You really can't. Bobby Webster's a part of it. Like I understand the need to sort of scapegoat one guy because he's like the big name there, and maybe that's just personal for you or something. But Masai Ujiri is a hell of an executive, man. It's like a reason why like teams would kill for him. Like they're really like if you did a draft, let me put it this way: if you did a draft, if all 30 teams had no GM tomorrow, if they all just waived all their GMs and they did a draft, Masai Ujiri would be a top 5 pick. Let's put it that way, right? You got to look at consistent greatness. I mean, consistency of results, right? I look at consistency in everything. It's not it's not how much weight you can lift once. It's how much weight do you lift every single day? How often you make it to the gym? Same thing with Scotty Barnes. He hasn't gone single digits once in a game that he's actually completed in 2 months. I think that's a very encouraging sign. Consistency matters. There was a point, I think last year or the year before, I looked at all teams' records over an 8-year span. The Raptors were second. You know who was first? The Golden State Warriors. The Golden State Warriors have enjoyed Steph Curry and the free agent signing of freaking Kevin Durant. And they had Jerry West at the helm as a consultant and, guiding the ship on so many of those decisions. I mean, the brain trust there, the luck, fundamentally the luck that Steph Curry, blossoms only after he signs that completely ludicrous, cheapy contract, allowing them to, there's so much luck that went into what the Golden State Warriors did. It was lightning in a bottle, right? Coaching, all that stuff. I'm just saying, let's not disrespect Masai Ujiri, and let's let's also not elevate him to God status and be like, oh, he can't do any wrong. Every move he does. Let's not go to either extreme because the truth is definitely somewhere in the middle. But I assure you, he is much better than he is not good. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. He's much better than I think you think he is. Let's put it that way. That I agree with. Anyway, have a good night. Have a good night. Good day, guys, and enjoy your Sunday or Saturday. Is it Saturday? It's Saturday today. Enjoy your Saturday, and I'll see you tomorrow at the live for the Charlotte game. And hopefully, we do not blow that. Because if we do blow that, 6-hour live incoming, probably. All right. Make sure to hit like, subscribe if you haven't already, and have a great weekend, guys. Cheers.